Hi, and welcome to the Right to Remain Silent podcast. I'm Jim Weber, your host and guide through actual accounts of intriguing and fascinating true crime stories as told by the law enforcement professional that experienced the event. The Right to Remain Silent podcast makes no exaggeration of fact, doesn't glamorize details, or sensationalize reality. The format here is basic. Real stories from real cops. Lastly, please don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and share. Doing this will help me continue to provide you, the listener, with captivating and relevant true crime stories. Now, let's listen in on today's episode. Hi, and welcome to today's episode of the Right to Remain Silent podcast. I am your host, Jim Weber, and today we are talking with Tony Farias, a retired resident agent in charge or special agent with the United States Department of Homeland Security Investigations. Tony, welcome, and thank you so much for talking to me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, buddy. It's good to see you. Good to hear from you.
Excellent. All right. Well, hey, today we're going to talk about Tony's law enforcement career. He's a veteran in law enforcement with years and years of experience on the front lines. He's worked as a special agent. He's worked as an undercover operative. He's worked as an upper level supervisor or manager. He's worked on the southern border. He's worked on the interior of the United States in one of the largest cities in the country, Chicago. He has worked in the Midwest United States. So he's well-versed and well-experienced in federal law enforcement. And today we're just going to kind of talk about his career, things that he's done, things that he's learned, and perhaps maybe some moments that shaped his career. But also, just as importantly, if not more, we're going to touch on something that affects many people. It affects police officers. It affects military. It affects first responders and everyday people alike, anxiety. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later in our conversation. And when we talk about anxiety, the pressures of the job can weigh heavy on an individual. And anxiety just isn't an abstract concept. It's a real challenge that can impact people. And it can impact relationships and even an individual's survival in law enforcement. So again, very important topic that we're going to cover with Tony. Again, Tony, super honored to have you here today. All right.
Thank you, brother.
All right. So I think what I'd like to do is start out here. Well, first I want to say Tony and I worked together forever ago. Gosh, I want to say 25 plus years ago, somewhere in that ballpark.
Right around 2001, 2002.
Yeah. So quite a ways back, we worked together in Chicago, and that's where I first met him. And I want to say, the very first time I met this dude, I'm like, who is this big dude? He's a super nice guy. He's very, just a big guy. And he's one of those folks that when I first met him, I'm like, I like this guy. And I think I'm going to pay attention to him because I can learn from him. So, again, this guy is well-versed and very experienced in law enforcement. And I just wanted to mention that. I'm confident the conversation today is going to be insightful and helpful. So if it's okay with you, Tony, I'm going to go over your work bio.
Sure.
All right.
Yes,
and
sir.
if I misstate something or something incorrect, don't be afraid to jump in there and say, hey, it's this year or it's that. So,
I got you.
All right. So here we go. Tony started his law enforcement career right out of college in 1991 with the Federal Bureau of Prisons in San Diego, California. In 1992, he was hired as a special agent with the United States Customs Service and began his first assignment in Laredo, Texas. In June 2001, he transferred to the Special Agent in Charge office in Chicago, Illinois, where he worked as a special agent until transferring to McAllen, Texas in 2003. He was the group supervisor in the narcotics group there in McAllen. Also, coincidentally, in 2003, the U.S. Customs Service was transitioned into the newly created United States Department of Homeland Security. So, Tony is actually an original employee or an original member of the newly created Department of Homeland Security back in 2003. So he worked in that agency from day one, the very first day those doors were opened with Homeland Security. In 2008, Tony transferred to Wichita, Kansas, where he was the resident agent in charge until he retired in December of 2018. Today, Tony works as the assistant director of transportation for a school district in Kansas. That bio reads like a master class in success. That is remarkable. And I got to again say, I'm proud to know you, Tony.
No, I appreciate that, brother.
All right. So, just like the infomercials say, but wait, there's more. There's more to
There's
know.
more. There's plenty more.
There's more about Tony. And these are some
Yeah.
things that when he and I were communicating and talking before today, that he mentioned, I thought, man, these are very important things that I want to mention about him because it goes to show the type of person he is. It goes to show his character, and it kind of goes to show his family mentality. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about him. He was born in Laguna Beach, California, and he grew up in South Texas. How do you pronounce that? Is it Sherryland? Sherryland?
Sherryland. Yes, sir. Sherryland. Very proud to be from there. It's the town proper was Mission, Texas. Small town, man. 13, probably back then in the 70s was 13,000, I think. And we
Wow.
were a suburb of Mission, Texas. We were a small little school district, probably 4 miles wide by 12 miles long. And all the
Wow.
greatest athletes in Mission came out of Sherryland, Texas. Tell you
All right. And we'll discuss that here in a little bit too.
that.
You know, and talking about the school district, an interesting fact, you said that you went to kindergarten through high school on the same campus in Mission,
Probably
Texas.
about 4 to 5 acres big. Yep.
Wow. Wow. That's
Mm.
kind of cool. And then fast forwarding to his senior year of high school, Tony was voted several things. He was the offensive player of the year in football. He was the defensive player of the year in basketball. He was the most valuable player in baseball. In 1985, he was voted Mr. High School. And he was also on the honor roll, the AB honor roll. And from high school, Tony went on and attended Baker University in Kansas on a football and baseball scholarship. That's impressive in itself. And when he was at Baker, he was actually voted first team All-American for football his senior year. That's impressive. You know, you don't meet a lot of people that achieve that goal. So that is really impressive here. While at Baker, he also earned a BA in sociology. Also in college, Tony met his wife. They married. They had their son. Um, and Tony's wife is a retired federal probation officer, and his son is a sheriff's deputy. So I mention all these things again to show the type of person Tony is and the family that he's created. Um, I just wanted to highlight those things. So I'm finally going to let Tony get a few words in here, and I'm going to quit talking so much. Let me ask you this. I always ask the guest, tell me why it was that you actually got into law enforcement. What caused Tony to get into law enforcement?
That's easy. My dad was he started off as he was a Marine, and I don't know if he did 4 or 6 years with the United States Marine Service, Marine Corps, and retired out of or left out of California, and he became a police officer with the San Clemente Police Department, and then we transitioned. He got a job with the Border Patrol in the Rio Grande Valley, Rio Grande City, and that's where we transferred from California to Texas and lived in Mission. Um, and I always saw my dad in uniform, always looked up to him, and I was like, man, I want to, like a lot of kids, I want to be like my dad.
Sure.
And then I remember somewhere, I don't know, it's probably around junior high, maybe a little younger than that. My dad was now out of uniform. And I was like, man, what is going on here? Why is he not in his cool uniform? Because to me,
Right.
cops in uniform, that's what I want. I want to be a cop in uniform.
Yep.
And so I kind of wondered what's going on here. Why is he not like that anymore? I said, well, he's now with ASU. He's with the anti-smuggling unit, which was a plainclothes, some undercover work, more of an investigator, and unmarked vehicles. Always gone in the middle of the night doing stuff, and then it's like okay, and I didn't think much of that. I was like plainclothes cops. That's kind of weird, man. And
Mm-hmm.
then to find out through his peers that oh no, dude, you got to understand your dad. He's of course, once the cases are over, it's like, well, he infiltrated this Chinese smuggling ring, was able to do stuff with those guys. I'm like, golly, man, well, maybe dad's really important. So
Yeah.
that was the thing that always drove me. I didn't know anything else other than that's what I wanted to emulate him. And it's weird, man, because when I was about to graduate college, and of course, like you touched on it, that my wife and I had our son our junior year in college, and it was tough times, man, trying to find work and then going to school full time, having a baby, and it was tough times. But my senior year was looking for a uniform job. I applied with Lawrence PD, Albuquerque PD. It was probably around January. And my dad was a man of very few words. And this, old Hispanic, and a lot of dads are like that, but old Hispanic, the old world of, never said, "Hey, I'm proud of you." Never. But you knew he
Right.
was. Never,
Right.
never. I'll go back a little bit. Pitch the game, a one hitter, dude hit it off the top of the fence, struck out 13 guys. Like, why'd you hand that curveball to that guy? That's all he, you know what I mean? So that
Right.
kind of stuff. But
Right.
always wanted to be like him. And then I remember applying for those jobs, and my dad was like, "You need to get in the federal system." And I'm like, "Dad, I want to be in uniform and help people." And he's like, "Get in the federal system. You'll thank me when you retire because of the benefits and all that good stuff, right?"
Right.
So, man, that's I always wanted to be like my dad, and luckily, the first job that I took as a federal officer, it fell into my lap, man. It really did.
Really? Now,
Mm.
is that Federal Bureau of Prisons?
Yes, sir.
Can
Yeah,
you tell us how that came about?
yeah. It was crazy, man. So you're talking about my last semester of college. Football's done, all the accolades, all that good stuff done. Now we're into parenthood. What are we going to do when we graduate? And I started helping Baker recruit football players. And the head recruiter for California was a guy, I think his name was Mr. Stevens. And I met him, and he's like, "Hey, what are you gonna, all these smart people, man, struggling, looking for jobs, in the business world and all that stuff." And he came up to me, he goes, "What are you gonna do?" And I said, "Man, I'm trying to get on in law enforcement." And he's like, "Why don't you come work for me?" And I'm like, "Work for you what?" And so it turned out that he was a special assistant to the warden with a Federal Bureau of Prisons in San Diego, California. And I'm
Wow.
like, well, shoot, I was born there. All my, three-quarters of my relatives are from California. And I said, sure, what I got to do? He goes, fill out I don't know if, man, you're probably not old enough, but the what was it, FSF 71,
Oh,
171?
yeah, I remember that. Yep.
And they were in and you hand wrote everything out. And so I did, turned it in. So right out of college, I already knew by March, I already knew where I was going, man. And I lucked out into a federal job, just like my dad wanted, a federal job. It started right away. And that was a struggle, dude. Living in California and I think it was like 18,000 a year or something.
Hmm.
We lived probably, I think it was an hour, 15 minutes away from my work because that's all we could afford.
Sure.
One way, drove this little Hyundai four-cylinder trying to save gas, and
Right.
it was a struggle. But dude, I tell you what, I wouldn't change I wouldn't change any. People are like, oh, you worked in a prison, man. You learn so much from those guys on how to deal and how to talk,
Yep.
and how to get along, man. So
Absolutely.
I loved it.
Yep. And I'm kind of similar in your story there. When I got into law enforcement, I started out at a small sheriff's department, but I started in the jail working as a jailer.
Hmm.
And same thing, everybody's like, oh, jailer? Why do you want to do that? I enjoyed it.
Yes,
I
sir.
liked talking to people, I liked learning, and it was a very interesting part of my law enforcement career. And I think benefited me personally from interact. It showed me how to interact
Yeah,
with these people.
yeah,
And it also showed me that they are people. Although they're
right,
incarcerated, they are people too with feelings and
right.
lives and stuff like that. So I would agree with you. I think that is a great start to a career, especially in federal prison. So let me say this. I'm going to back up real quick.
Hmm.
I wanted to mention this. I was always kind of envious. I don't want to say jealous, but envious of people that had family in law enforcement, that their dad or their uncle or their brother were in law enforcement and kind of guided them into it because I didn't have anybody in the law enforcement world to give me any guidance or suggestions or ideas. So I think that's great that your father was involved in that. And again, like I said, kind of almost envious of folks like that. Um, while we're still talking about the Bureau of Prisons, so did you start as a correctional officer? Is that what you did, or what did you
I
do there?
I started it was called ISM, Inmate Systems Management. So what we did was we received them when they were at their worst, and we released them when they were at their best. The saddest they could be, the happiest they could be. So, and we calculated their sentences. So, if Johnny got sentenced to 28 years, we'd calculate his release date, and
Gotcha.
you'd have to put in all the good time and, anything that they would get. So, you had to use a lot of math, so it's like, you look at the smart guy, like, dude, did I do this right? He's like, yeah, you got it right. And I also worked the floors, man. I took double shifts. I would tell my wife, it's like, I'm already downtown. I'm gonna work another 8 hours. And we needed it, man. And it was weird, bro, because I would talk to other people in different agencies, and they were like, hey, brother, you need to put in for, I hate bringing this up, man, but you need to put in for like food stamps and stuff, and you qualify because we didn't make a lot of money.
Sure.
And I just remember, man, just having that, and I'm not faulting anybody who does it, but just the pride, it's like, I'm not doing this, man. And I think I got a lot of that from my dad. It's like, I'm not doing this, man. I'm gonna make this thing work. We're gonna make this thing work. So I
Yeah.
was, 2 or 3 times a week working double shifts and just how do I work? You're young, man. So it's like, how do I do more? How do I
Right.
make more money? And then, you'd get a check for, $700, $800, and you're like, I'm making awesome money, and it was tough, bro. Because when I left college, I left my wife and my son behind, and I left them with their parents, with my wife's parents. And I drove out there by myself and just set up shop, dude. And I'm telling you that maybe a lot of people can relate to this. Like my life, as some of the troubles that I've had, has been blessed, man. Because everywhere I went, there was always someone to help. And I got to uh, San Diego, didn't know a lot of people. One of the dudes that I play football with, he's like, dude, just crash in my parents' house, man. You can sleep there till you figure something out.
Mm-hmm.
I did that when I was in training, and then I was like, I got to find an apartment. I got to get my wife and my son out here. And so I started looking for an apartment. My first check, dude, was straight to an apartment. And then I was like, I got to get furniture. I got to get utensils. I got to, all this stuff because I wanted them with me. And I remember going to a garage sale, bro. And like the dude had a couch and forks and all this stuff. And I'm like, and he must have seen it in my face, man, because he was like, what are you looking for? I said, man, I'm new to town, and I just need stuff. And how much you want for that couch? It was to me, it was a really nice L-shaped couch, too big for the apartment, but I liked it. And so I go, well, how much you want for that? Well, we want $200 for it. Okay. And then how much for this and this? And he knew that I didn't have a lot of money. He goes, well, how much money you guys? Well, I got about $100. And he's like, you know what, just take it all, man. Take it all. So I got furniture, I got utensils, I got all the lamps, all kinds of stuff. Him and his boys moved it to my apartment for me, so
Wow.
always,
Wow.
always found helping hands wherever, and then as soon as I got established, like I told my wife, and you get your butt out here and bring my son, because I missed him. So
Right.
it was good, man. It always, always helping hand everywhere,
Yep. Yep. That gives me a faith in humanity that there's
Yeah,
people there were people out there then and there are people out there now
right.
that are helpful like that. That's good to
Yep.
hear. So you were at the Bureau of Prisons for a while and then you left there and went to the U.S. Customs Service,
I
right?
did. I did. I remember I was doing a double shift and they're like, "Hey, you need to call your buddy." And your buddy Roy. And Roy was my high school quarterback. And Roy was a special agent with U.S. Customs Service down in South Texas. He was assigned to uh, it was in Rio Grande City and Roma area. I forgot what the office is called there, but anyway, he was stationed there. And I'm talking to him like, Roy, what's going on? And he's like, dude, apply now. And I'm like, there's no openings, man. And at that time you didn't have a phone to look on the internet and stuff. There's no,
Right.
dude, there's openings right now. They're looking for Spanish speakers. So I'm like, well, what do I do? He goes, fill out that I think it's 171 or 71, whatever it was. He goes, and walk it across the street. I already researched it. The SAC San Diego office is right across the street from you. So I remember filling it out and walking it over, man. And as soon as I walked it over, like 2 days later, they're calling and going, hey, when can you come in for an interview?
Wow.
I'm like, tomorrow? I didn't know what it was like, naive, right?
Sure.
And so then I get a call at night. They're like, hey, by the way, we need you to write a 500-word essay on why we should pick you over anybody else. And I'm like, what? So did that,
That
had
was
my wife
before
obviously.
AI where you could type something
Oh
in there.
gosh, bro. So I had my wife help me with that
Mhm.
and went over and got interviewed, man. And they were like, dude, we're gonna select you here. You're gonna get this car and you get to wear plain clothes and we wear jeans. And I was like, what kind of world is this, man? And
Mhm.
so I was super excited about it. And 6 months later, you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting. And then they finally called, man. And I remember I was walking in the office, I was, into the prison there, and I was gonna do a double shift. And they're like, you need to call. And as soon as I walked in, 8 o'clock our time, they're like, you need to call these people. They need to talk to you. And I'm like, who? And they're like, headquarters from Customs, I think it was. And like, so I called and they're like, hey, we got a job for you as a special agent in Laredo, Texas. Do you want it? I'm like, yeah, it could have been in Siberia, for
Sure.
U.S. Customs Service. I'm in.
Mhm.
And so absolutely, I took that job.
Awesome. That is awesome. Um, so you took that first assignment and then how long were you there at the first assignment
I
with
was
Customs?
there for almost 9 years in
Okay.
Laredo. Yeah.
Okay. That just reinforces I've always had a thought that good things happen to good people. So far that's what I'm hearing. Good things are happening to a good dude.
And I'm telling you, man, I in Laredo, I met some really good. If you let me talk about these guys a little bit, I met
Oh,
some
please
really
do.
good. I met some really good agents there. Sergio, this dude, man, he's like I don't know if everybody remembers the old MASH episodes. This dude was like radar, bro. This guy, I mean, we were, if you can imagine, on the border. Laredo's a border town with Nuevo Laredo, Mexico. And we were, I was young. We were an ultra aggressive group of guys. And to me, it was war, man. It was us against cartels and bad guys. And Sergio was you're about to kick in a door. You look at Sergio, are we legally good? Are we good? Are we good? Go. Yes, we're good. And you always look to him uh, because he's the one that kept you straight. He's the one that kept you
Hmm.
on path. So that dude was so invaluable for my career. Because if it wasn't for him, you look at TV and it's like, oh, watch these dudes, and in 30 minutes they've solved world crisis.
Right.
But it's not like that in the world. Obviously, a lot of people that listen to this podcast would know that. But you have to have those dudes, man. Then one of my dad's friends, a dude named Mundo. They used to call this guy El Toro, bro, the bull. And
Mm-hmm.
this dude, you know, 5'10", 5'9", maybe, but fearless. And he was a special agent with ASU with anti-smuggling with immigration, but was the best narcotic guy I knew. And he had a lot
Wow.
of informants, and he was fearless towards cartels, man. He just he's one of the dudes like, if you want to threaten me, line up because guess what? I know where you live. I know where you live, and he just ultra aggressive, and
Mm-hmm.
never did anything illegal.
Sure.
But I learned so much from him how to like, dude. And I remember one thing he always told me is like, you got to remember this, man. These dudes are, the cartels and these guys that are in gangs and the Vato Locos and the MS-13. So, dude, we're the biggest gang in the world. Us
That's
with the
right.
badges are the biggest gang in the world. Don't ever forget that. Don't ever forget that. If we need help, people are going to come running, you
Yep.
know?
That's a great point.
And that kind of put it in perspective, like, okay, and it's weird, man. We would do some crazy cases and one time we did an undercover deal and this dude pulled he's like, get out, get out, get out. We roll up on the scene and he's like, get out, get out, get out. And I get out of the passenger side of his truck and I pull out my gun, and I'm like, that we gave the signal that there's dope there, stuff you see on TV. And I get out and I pull my gun and in Spanish, I tell the guy, don't move. And the dude pulls a knife on me, right?
Hmm.
And I'm staring at him like, well, I don't remember this at the academy. What are we supposed to do when I got a gun and he's got a knife? I can't just shoot him because he was on the other side of the car from me. And he wasn't
Mm-hmm.
coming toward me. He just showing me a knife. I'm like, what is this dude doing? So I'm like, what I do? So I just kind of looked at the guy. Okay, let me think this through. And then all of a sudden, a blur from the left side of my peripheral. Here comes Mundo, man, and Mundo just grabs that dude and just kind of tosses him around. I'm like, okay, but years and years of experience. He was from Laredo, worked with Laredo PD. Um, just a great dude to learn from.
Yeah.
And you know this, Jim. There's a lot of agents, guys and girls that some are really aggressive. Some are they're street people, man. And there's other people that are administrators
Right.
that are awesome at sitting back and writing cases and writing, whatever. And
Sure.
and but they would struggle on the street. Not that they wouldn't be good at it, but they would struggle because they don't have that experience.
Right.
And everybody in Laredo, they were all street dudes, man. And it was
Mm-hmm.
it was a lot of fun. Laredo was. I learned in those almost 9 years, man. I learned so much from those guys on how my career, what direction it was going to go. And maybe I lacked a little bit on the admin side, but dude, as far as the street side, man, we had a good group, solid. Um, and it to me, of course I'm biased, dude. It was a tough group to beat. They're good guys, man, real good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't realize that you were down there for that long until you and I were talking the past week or two. That had to be, like you said, such a learning experience because I don't know if people realize there's a difference between working the border and working the interior of the United States.
Absolutely.
I worked, I was assigned to Chicago. After working there for years, I transferred to St. Louis. My
Hmm.
career, I spent on the interior of the United States. I would do temporary duty assignments to the border, but I can't say that I lived there and worked there 24/7. But
Yeah,
I always heard from agents, such as yourself, that it was such a learning experience down
for
there, and
sure.
that's what it sounds like.
I wish that our agency, Homeland Security, when you first start as a brand new agent out of the academy, I wish everybody would start on the border. Do a
Yeah,
tour duty on the border
I
because
think.
you'll learn so much in a short amount of time. Even if it's a year, 2 year experience, you learn so much, man. Real
Oh,
fast.
wholeheartedly agree with that. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Now, so you mentioned undercover. Did you do a lot of undercover down there in your time in Laredo?
No, very
Okay.
minimal. Yeah, we
Okay.
we we dealt more with informants than undercover because there was just so much stuff, man. And I learned again, I'll go back to Mundo. I learned so much from that dude is if people it's hard for people to imagine this, but we would catch a guy, let's say, with 800 pounds of marijuana in his house, right? And I would watch Mundo, and Mundo would be talking to this dude. And to me, Mundo was like Newt Rockney, man. We have a funny story where we're sitting in the office, and he's trying to recruit this bad guy, to be an informant for us. And I'm just sitting there listening to the way he's kind of maneuvering this dude, and he's kind of getting into this guy's psyche in his mind and trying to convince him that he'll do the right thing by helping law enforcement. And at the end, I remember Mundo going, "Can you do it? Can you do it?" And I almost remember jumping up myself, "I can do it. I can do it," because it was just so compelling to listen to this dude, man. It was interesting, but no, very, very minimal, probably a couple of cases there. As far as undercover, my main undercover stuff was Chicago,
Okay.
because I was brought up there for a specific reason.
Hmm.
Um, so that was an interesting time too. In Chicago it was fun, but man, it was so different, brother, from the border to go to there. You learn the difference between instant gratification of a dope load. An informant calls in, dude, there's 1,000 pounds of marijuana in this house. You set up, stop a guy, get consent, you go back, you get it. The dude confesses it's his wife has nothing to do with it. Take him to court, they plea, and you move on. And dude, you're talking about 3, 4 times a week this was going on. So it wasn't like,
Yeah.
and that, this was instant gratification stuff. Then you go to Chicago, and I'm like, dude, where is this house? Let's go hit this dude. Let's go consent. Let's get a search warrant. And it was like, no, hold on, dude. This is long-term investigations, and then we're going to scoop up everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there was a
Yeah.
big difference between what we were doing on the border and then when I got to Chicago. I had to expand my mind, dude. I'd never been to anything like that. It was very different for me.
Let's kind of explore that a little bit if you don't mind. So you transfer up to Chicago from the border, and what were your thoughts? I mean, you told me, you told us earlier, hey, you grew up, you went to school in a small town, in a small school district, and then all of a sudden, fast forward here, you're living in Chicago. I think it's like the second or third, fourth largest city in the
Mhm.
nation. For me, I'm a hillbilly from Missouri. When I went to Chicago, I was overwhelmed. How was it for you?
The same thing, brother. I was so intimidated. Um, I'd run into a guy that was a DEA agent, and he lived and I don't mind mentioning it now since I'm not there anymore. We lived in Plainfield, Illinois, and
Hmm.
that's where he lived. And he was like, "Dude, live here. It's a nice little community. Your son will be good. He can go to school here. My son would have been in the sixth grade then. It'll be good from here, and you can drive in." He goes, "Dude, it's like 35, 40 minutes into downtown, and that's where our office was downtown." And I'm like, okay, let's make that drive just to make sure. So we drove it, dude. We drove it on a Saturday, no traffic. We drove it. It was like 40 to 45 minutes. I go, nah, this isn't bad. Yeah, I'm gonna find a home in Plainfield. So we did. We found a nice home. My wife liked it. We bought it. Brother, Monday through Friday traffic is a lot different than Saturday traffic.
Heck
And it
yeah.
was an hour and a half, hour 45 minutes one way.
Yeah.
And
And
my
that's,
wife was, she was already working with the federal probation. She started that in Laredo. We were lucky she got her job in Chicago, and she was commuting on the train, dude. And she was leaving the house at 5:30 to make the Joliet train at 6 to make it in on time for her job. So
yeah. Yeah. I mean, if
big
it
time,
rained,
man.
if it snowed up there, you're doubling and tripling your commute
Yeah,
time.
yeah. It was crazy time, and I want to take the time right now to mention and honor Lisa Brown. I mean, she passed away this week. Uh, Dude, one of the greatest supervisors I've ever had. I learned a lot from her how to be very straightforward. You're going to hurt people's feelings, but you're being honest with them. And then you try to help them. Once you're honest with them, if you see that you've kind of broken them a little bit, then you help them, you prop them back up, but you're always truthful. And she was always truthful with me, man. And sometimes, like, God dang, you think you're doing a good job for them, and then they hit you with something. It's like, crap, man, I got to try harder. But she would always have your back, and I learned
Yeah.
so much from her, man.
Yep. I would agree. I'm glad you mentioned that. When I heard that news, you had mentioned it. to me, it hurt my heart because she
Hmm.
not only was a good supervisor, but she was a good person.
Yeah,
So I'm sorry to hear that that happened.
yeah, yeah,
She was very helpful to me when I was up there. My father was going through, he had terminal cancer while I was living in Chicago, and she helped me get home to St. Louis to see out, the end of his life down here. So I always had a fondness for her for helping me in
yeah,
my situation. And she was like that for so many other people, so helpful
yeah.
and such a good supervisor.
She was awesome, man. She was amazing, amazing person.
Yep, yep. So let's talk a little bit about Chicago. So you're there, and that's kind of where your undercover work
Yeah, yeah.
began.
So
Can you
I,
mention or
I,
discuss?
you know,
You can be general or specific,
yeah,
whatever you're
I hope I don't
comfortable with.
offend anybody, but I call that the we're running out of Mexicans phase when Chicago had some operations going and they're running out of Spanish speakers. So they're like, "Hey man, how would you and we out of Laredo, we had done a lot of controlled deliveries to Chicago. So I got to meet a lot of the guys, a lot of the supervisors, and got to be friends with them. It's like, dude, why don't you come work for us, man? And we're looking for some more Spanish speakers. And I was like, yeah, you know what? If you guys pay my way, I'll come work for you. And that's
Sure.
how I made it off the board. And not that I really wanted out, man. My best friend Frank, he was a federal probation officer in Laredo. I mean, we're still best friends today. And they come and visit us all the time. We go down to Laredo and visit him. And I didn't really want to leave, but it was like, you know what, let's try something different, So I said,
Hmm.
yeah, take me to Chicago. So, got in there and it was different, man, because like I said, I was used to the instant gratification. Like, well, slow down. Now we got to do this stuff, and
Right.
I learned from there was a Illinois State Trooper, and I hopefully I get his name right. I think his name was Vic. That I learned a lot from him. And Vic, I mean, if you can imagine, godly, I'm trying to think of who would look like him. Somebody would relate to him, but just this tall guy with glasses. If you saw him, you would never think he was a cop. Just he looked like a professor.
He did. I know
But
exactly
the
who you're talking about.
guy, when he was okay, you can go, okay, it's Vic. Okay, 3, 2, 1, boom, and he's somebody else. And he was so good at it. And I learned that you didn't have to dress tough. You didn't have to look tough. You didn't even have to speak tough. This dude, because of the way he could talk to people, he was able to get away with, not get away, but he was able to get the job done of what he needed to do. And I
Yeah.
learned it, it's like, Tony, just come with me, don't say a word, learn. Okay. So I would go kind of like his strong man backup guy, right?
Right.
And man, I just watch him. We'd fly to Miami, do something, and I would just watch him, and I'm like, dang man, this dude, I want to be like this dude. And you
Yeah.
learn a lot from different guys that were doing the work, and
Yeah.
people that guide you, Ernie, Ernie, and
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
he was like that would just Lou. I don't know if you ever met Lou. It might have been a little bit before your time. Lou, Alex, those dudes, they were supervisors. Those dudes were good guiding lights for me, man. They
Hmm.
were keeping me in line.
It's interesting you mentioned that because you had guys like that that were influential to you, and I will never in my life forget working in Chicago. And I had a case. It was a heroin smuggling case, and we needed an undercover. It wasn't like a long-term role. It was kind of a short-term thing, and it was you. And you were. I still have this picture ingrained in my mind. We're driving a cab in an undercover capacity, and it involved a source that we were using. And when we were out on the streets of Chicago, and I saw you pull up like that, I'm like, this guy, this guy's cool. He knows what he's doing, and I kind of want to be like him and do that stuff. So it's funny you mentioned, Vic and those guys like that. That you kind of looked at him that way. I kind of looked at you, and that's in a similar way. And I just
I
wanted to mention
appreciate that,
that.
man. I really do appreciate that. So, I think we talked a little bit about it. So many years later, you sometimes look for validation. It's like, man, did I do a good job? Did anybody care what I was doing? In your mind, you're like, man, we were on salary, dude. We weren't on overtime, and you could do your 9 to 5 and go home. I was never that dude, man. I don't know if I was just striving to impress my dad or what, but man, if there was work to be done, we were gonna do it. You were one of those guys, and there was a lot of guys that I know that until the work's done, we're gonna be here, and yeah, you look for validation with that kind of stuff. It's just someone saying, dude, I looked up to you, or dude, you were awesome at this, or you did good at this, and so it's good to hear, man. I really appreciate
Yeah.
that. Thank
Oh
you.
yeah. Again, one more short story and I'll move on. But, in that same case, it ended up we were writing a T3 to do a wiretap. And oftentimes, I'd work into the evenings and stuff in the office there. And I'll never forget one of the supervisors had a little office and we'd sit in there and kick back, kick around ideas and stuff. And you were oftentimes in the office in the evenings or late at night, and you would come in. I don't know if you remember this, but you would come in and sit down on that couch with me and give me good ideas. And again, I have fond memories of that and learned so much from you. So validation right there that you did do a good job, and
I
people
appreciate that.
people did appreciate what you did.
Thank you, brother.
Uh, was it looking back on your Chicago experience? Would you do it again if you had to do it over?
That is a great question, man. You know, um, I would do it again because of what I learned of the undercover world, I think. We got a chance to uh, you know, fly to, Colombia and
Right.
fly to Venezuela and just do different things, for the US government and things, I'm not going to really get into detail about them, but just different things that all by the book. They were legal stuff, but it was fun, and playing roles of man, the greatest thing to me, this is what I took a lot of satisfaction in Undercover, and hopefully you guys that are listening and girls that are listening will take something out of this was man, I'm just a dude, man. I'm just a dad. I gotta make it to this parent teacher conference at 6 o'clock. And I'm sitting here talking to some cartel dude about 200 keys of coke, and I
Right.
took great satisfaction in that this dude could beat you at your own game. This is what you do for a living, dude. You're a crook. You're a bad guy. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
don't exist in my circle of off work. You don't exist. But today I'm here with you. And the fact that I could beat you at your game, I took great satisfaction in that, man. And dude, was it anybody who tells you that undercover work is not scary and it's not nerve-wracking, dude, they're lying to you. It's
Right.
scary as all get out, dude. And you're always you remember back in the day we were renting vehicles once a week, changing out of vehicles. You remember
Mm-hmm.
that? And
Yep.
and taking different routes home every day because you had to check, make three right turns, make three right turns, make sure
Right.
nobody's following you, that kind of stuff. And it was a crazy time, dude. But that's what I do. Would I do it again? I would just maybe just for the satisfaction of knowing that you could beat these dudes. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
I
I
tell
get
you
it.
what, my job was a passion, man. I never looked at it as like, wow, they're giving me money to do this. No, man, I wanted these dudes off the street, man.
Yep.
Maybe it sounds cheesy to some people, but dude, I didn't want these people around, man.
Right. Right. Yep. And I think law enforcement needs more of that mentality and that type of forward thinking, to be effective.
Yeah.
Um, so from Chicago, to kind of walk us through where you went from there.
So Chicago, it was interesting because we were out on a surveillance, and it might have been your surveillance. We were out, and it was late night, man. It was like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I had taken the supervisor test, and I passed the supervisor test, and I passed the interviews, and I did all this, and I remember talking to Lisa, and Lisa's like, "Hey, we're gonna try to find a spot for you. Here's a supervisor here," and I'm like, "Okay." And to me, like working in Chicago, man, it took a lot of brain power, dude, because you're talking about search warrants and wiretaps and all kinds of, a lot of admin stuff, and supervisors were the leaders, and the senior agents like yourself, they were leaders on how to do stuff. Dude, I'm a street thug, man. I wanted to be on the street, and it's I
Right.
kind of, yeah. So I remember sitting on the surveillance, and man, like the light bulb just went on. I'm like, you know what? I want to go back home, man. I want to go back home, and I want to be the supervisor of a drug group. That's what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So the dude who was now Doug K, he was now the acting SAC of San Antonio when he was my acting rack in Laredo when I was there. And I remember just picking up the phone, dude, 2 in the morning, calling him on his cell. And I'm like, dude, I want to go home. He goes, wait, Tom. I said, I passed my supervisor test. Find me a job in the Rio Grande Valley where I'm from. Nobody wanted to go down there. It was hard work, you know.
Right.
Nobody wanted to go. I said, dude, I'll get back easy. He goes, are you serious? You want to come back? Yeah. And he goes, man, I'll call you back. And then, it got worked out, as a lot of deals get worked out. He got worked out, and he's like, you okay with going to McAllen? I'm like, dude, McAllen is 10 miles from my house, where I grew up. Heck yeah. I know where the river's at there, and I know how to get to these trails, and I know how to.
Sure.
So I left. I left in December of 2000 January 2003, the very first days of January 2003, I arrived in McAllen. And it was weird, man, because I remember I arrived, they gave me my stuff, gave me my car, and they're like, yeah, at that time in service, supervisors were on every operation. You had to be on scene. So they're like, hey, welcome to McAllen. Hey, your group's got a deal tonight at 7 o'clock. I'm like, right on, dude, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
So I went out there, and I remember a dude, man, his name, I think it was Curtis. He's like, hey man, welcome to McAllen. He goes, we're sorry to get you this, but we do things a little bit different around here. It's a little bit more faster paced. And I'm in my head going, dude, I'm from Laredo. I was in Laredo, Texas. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I was like,
Yeah.
let's go. So we it ended up turning around on them because I'm like, dude, I started recruiting informants as a supervisor. We got this, and they were like, again, we got to go out again. Yeah, dude.
You're like,
So
this is how we do it down here.
that's right. So the best time in my career, I would have to say, was McAllen as a supervisor of the narcotic group. Some
Yeah.
good dudes, man. Freddie, Vance, Lupe, uh, Brian, those dudes. It was strange, man. I had a 13, 14 guys. I don't know how many it was, but with the task force guys, all type A personality, all gun toters, aggressive dudes, man. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And just kind of trying to mold them to all work together, man. And dude, so if I can expand a little bit on this.
Please, please do.
When I was in Chicago, you do undercover work, and it's this, this and that, and you start believing that you're as good as you think you are, right? And you're never that, right? So I get down to McAllen, and I meet Superman and his partner, Roy, who hopefully you'll have him on, and his partner Ray, and they work for, I don't mind mentioning, I think, yeah, they're both retired, so they work for the FAR Police Department, and they were on the task force, the Customs Task Force at that time. And dude, you talk about, okay, I thought I was pretty cool at undercover. These dudes, I mean, I'm dealing with dudes up in the Midwest. These dudes are dealing straight direct with cartel guys, and fearless, man, fearless. And I learned a lot, man, because I would look at Roy and I would go, God dang, this dude, this is a guy you want to be, cool and calm, good family dude, and just a different dude when he was doing undercover work, right? And then
Right.
I remember one time I would always be the guy that protected them. We'd have live wires, and I was always listening. And if something seemed shady, I get him out. And I remember one time he was doing a deal with the guy, and he was, and Roy and Ray both were certified truck drivers also, so they could
Mm.
post anything they wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
And they were doing a deal with the guy, and it was, I don't know, man, maybe a ton of weed or something. And I was hearing Roy on the audio, and he would, it's all in Spanish, and he's like, no, no, yes, sir, no, yes, sir, yes, very meek, right? And I'm like, God dang, man, this isn't Roy, man. What's wrong with him, you know? And I
Yeah.
let it go and I let it go. And then afterward, I talked to him. And it was a good learning point for me, man, because I said, Roy, why were you letting this dude talk to you like that? Because usually we're aggressive dudes and stuff like that.
Right.
Why were you bowing down to this dude? He goes, Tony, he goes, you got to remember, man, I'm a truck driver. I'm trying to make a little bit of money for my family. I'm trying to make 50,000 to take this load from here to Atlanta. You know, I have to play it. And man, that light bulb went on in my head like, gosh, dang, these
Yeah.
are, stuff
They're
that I
legit.
never think of. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
in your real world, you wouldn't take the way that guy's talking to that. You would never take it in your personal life.
Right.
But in that role, I'm like, God, you learn from these dudes. And I'll tell you what, if you ever ask me who the best undercover guys I've ever met, Roy and Ray, I don't know to separate them one and two. They're 1 and 1, and
Wow.
then everybody else starts at 50.
Yeah.
Those dudes were amazing.
Wow. Wow. That sounds pretty interesting. This episode of the Right to Remain Silent podcast is brought to you by Streetwise 360 Law Enforcement Consulting, your go-to resource for expert law enforcement training. Whether it's conducting successful criminal investigations, performing undercover work, mastering interviews, conducting surveillance, utilizing confidential informants, or case strategy, Streetwise 360 gives officers the real-world skills they need for success. Learn more at streetwise-360.com because knowledge is power in the field. Now back to the show. So you're down there, you're working down there as a supervisor.
Yeah.
How long are you doing that and where do you go from there?
So I did that for almost 5 years to the day. And then what took us out of McAllen, my hometown, dude, we built our home from scratch, our own floor plans, the whole shebang. What took us out of there was I met my wife in the Midwest, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got a Midwest education. My son, coming out of we went as we've been talking, we went kind of around the US a little bit and made it
Right.
back home. My son went to the same freaking high school that I went to, with the
Wow.
same ladies working the front desk that were there when I
Mm-hmm.
was there, and they all
Mm-hmm.
knew him. And so anyway, he ends up getting a football scholarship to University of Central Missouri in Warrensburg, Missouri.
Wow.
50
Like
miles.
father, like son.
Here you go. So he's at a bigger school than I was, and he ends up going there because he had a chance to go to Texas A&I, Kingsville, and all these other schools that were in Texas. And I said, dude, I'm sorry. I know you got your high school sweetheart and all that thing. You're going to the Midwest. Find yourself a school in the Midwest because that's where I got educated. That's where I met your mama. You're going to go to the Midwest. So he's like, okay, Dad. So he ends up getting a lot of offers in the Midwest, small Division II schools, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And he finally picks one. And so then me, the dummy that I was, like, well, shoot, I'm not gonna be able to watch him play football anymore. I'm like, no, this ain't gonna happen, man. So luckily, I did a decent job for
Mm-hmm.
Lisa in Chicago, Lisa Brown, and I called her, just called her direct to her phone, and I said, Lisa, I know that Wichita's open. I'd like to take that, and I knew it was open for a while. They had trouble filling it or something, and I said, I'll take that job if you if you let me take it. And she's like, really, you'll do that? I go, absolutely. And so, dude, and Lisa's phone calls, man. Lisa's not like, oh, let's send an email, see what happens. Lisa's like, I'll call you right back. And then,
Right.
probably, I don't know, 6, 7 hours later, when do you want to go? And
Wow.
then they're going to call you from headquarters. And then those headquarters calling, when do you want to move? And I'm like, God, this is quick. Is it a paid move? They're like, yeah, absolutely. When do you want? And I'm like, wow. So by January of 2008, I was in Wichita.
Wow. Wow. What'd you think of Wichita?
Dude. So Wichita, because I went to Baker, small town in Kansas. Wichita was different, man, because Wichita was an immigration office, right? So now we got
Mm-hmm.
to back up a little bit because in 2000, like you mentioned, 2003, we converted from U.S. Customs to Homeland Security. And so now customs offices were integrated with immigration offices and vice versa. So Wichita was mainly an immigration office. So picture in your head, dude, this narcotic dude from the customs service who bleeds blue. I mean,
Right.
that was all about customs. Now comes into an immigration office where and I and being that no, we work all the time, dude. This is your job. And they were more like, we get things done at our pace and when we do it. And I showed up there, yeah, this isn't gonna fly, brother. We're gonna help it. And so, and you're talking about some dudes that senior agents, dude, I learned
Set
so
in their
much.
ways.
Oh, yeah. And I learned so much from them, though. Victor, you know, uh, Victor passed away recently, but Victor and Carl, those two guys, man, they were the kind of the seniors of the office, and they
Hmm.
were acting racks at the time, right? They just kind of shipped every 6 months. They would switch around. I learned so much from them dudes, man. And I tell you that, it's like, dude, where are your informant files? Oh, we have them over here. It's like, why aren't they locked up like secure? And it was just different. Yeah, I'm not saying it was wrong. It was just different.
Right. Right.
And so it was funny, man. We started arresting people left and right. I'm like, okay, so if you're an immigration officer, anybody who's running the streets illegal, we're arresting them. Well, wait a minute. No, no, no. So I think the first year I was there, man, I think we arrested like 300 or 400 people. And a
Wow.
lot of it was admin stuff, right? But a lot of
Sure.
it was criminal stuff. And I remember always turning to Carl and Victor, and they'd bring me the paperwork or it was in the system. And I'm like, is it right? And they're like, yeah, dude, just push the button, push enter. I'm like, okay, what immigration, what the stuff looked like, but you
Right.
you had to trust these dudes. They knew what they were talking about,
Right.
and I'll tell you a quick story about that, brother. So I got there in January, and in March, Wichita PD wanted to do an operation, and to me, I'm like, heck yeah, let's go, man. It was illegal alien gangbangers that were just
Hmm.
terrorizing the city.
Sure.
And I'm like, yeah, now I feel like we're back to being
Now
able
you're
to
doing something.
go,
Yep.
right? So I meet and we're good friends to this day, a buddy of mine named Todd. And he was a supervisor of street gang, I think it was street gang or something like that. So I meet him and we set it all up with our chief. And dude, I'm me, man. What you see was what you get. And
Right.
we're trying to, and they're like, well, can you guys do this? I go, heck yeah, man. So they gave us a name of like 50 gangbangers. Uh, no social security numbers, all this stuff. We're like, yeah, for sure they're illegals, right? So
Hmm.
they were all just like I said, terrorizing the city. So we set this whole thing up, and so now we're you can imagine 70 uniformed cops, and then us in plain clothes. There's probably I don't know 10 or 12 of us that are helping out. EROs helping us, enforcement removal guys from Homeland Security, and I remember showing up on the scene, man. We're getting there to get going, and dude, I'm in jeans, I'm in my t-shirt, my boots. I got my gun in my waistband. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
and of course I got my HSI vest when we're about to hit the houses. Got that on, and I'm looking at my buddy Todd, and dude, all these dudes are like super swatted, tatted, tacked out, and I'm like, yeah, because you forget in Texas everything's, we're down on the border, everything's in plain clothes. You're at the movies with your wife, you got your gun. You
Yeah.
you go to the restaurant to eat, you got your gun, but
Right.
you were tacked out, So I was used to that kind of scene.
Right.
And it all worked out, man. We were two different cats, dude. Just he
Yeah.
was a supervisor over there, I was a supervisor over here, and we were two different people trying to do the same job, you know.
Sure.
And I learned a lot from watching those guys and how they did stuff. And dude, and I appreciate those guys. Dude, I'm telling you, man, I'm very envious because I always wanted to be a street dude, man. I always wanted to be the guy in uniform helping, you
Hmm.
know, people right away. You show up and help somebody in a burning car, whatever it was. But our world was just different, man. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
I do.
I had a good time, dude. I spent 11 years as a resident agent in charge in Wichita.
I didn't realize it was that long. That's quite a
Yeah,
while.
yeah. 2000 and I got there January 2008 and retired December 2018. So yeah, it put me right at about
Yeah.
11 years there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, one of the things you mentioned when we were talking in days working up to this is when you were the rack there. in Wichita. You mentioned like when people would retire or maybe they would transfer and you would host like a barbecue or
Yep.
a cookout or a dinner at your house with your
Yep.
family, with your coworkers. Can you tell us like a little bit about that? Like why did you
Sure.
do that? And
You,
and
you know,
just
I got used to no matter who the people that work for you, you respect them because of the job they do. They don't all have to be your beer drinking buddies, but you respect them, and to me it was you protect them. You protect them as best you could. They're all grown men and women. They know what they're doing, but as an administrator, you protect them from the administration. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
Like guide them, make sure that they don't do something crazy, and I always took everybody under my wing, whether I liked them or didn't like them as a personal friend. Um, I would try to take care of. So one thing that so I could show my gratitude towards a lot of people was I, dude, I'm a Texas dude, man. We barbecue. That's what we do. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'd always host, I tried to host, 4th of July's and retirements and whatever it came, it's like, dude, we should get together for this. Let's do it at my house. Okay, yeah, let's do that. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to show some appreciation, my guys. And when I was in Laredo, every Thursday was guys' night, and the wives and girlfriends understood it. And it was just guys' night. We'd go to Sergio, my buddy.
Mm-hmm.
We'd go to his house. Sergio was one of the most eligible bachelors in Laredo at that time. I mean, good looking dude. His house is paid off, beautiful house in a nice neighborhood. And all the agents would show up there and we'd barbecue at 5 o'clock. And everybody knew what they were supposed to do. 20 bucks here, 20 bucks here, 20, send a guy out early, at 4 o'clock, go get the
Right.
beer, go get the meat, go do this. We're gonna barbecue. And then we'd go to a sports bar or something, drink some more beer, whatever. Um, so that camaraderie that we had there, we had it in McAllen as well. Chicago was a little different because everybody lived so far away, but
Right.
that kind of stuff we did all the time. So I try to bring some of that to Wichita. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
to this day, man, my backyard is used to have this little half moon patio. And I told my wife, I said, listen, I want to get back to Texas. Are we going? And my wife's mother lives close to here. And I said, we're going back to Texas or are we staying here? And she's like, well, I'd like to stay here. And I'm like, okay. So what I did was I took out a big old loan from my TSP and
Mm-hmm.
I built me a Texas backyard. I'm like, no, if I'm staying, I'm going to make this my.
Heck yeah. Yep.
So, dude, when I left McAllen, they gifted me this $1,000 barbecue pit. It
Oh
says
man.
Dallas Cowboys on it with my last name on it. Big old
Wow.
heavy duty gauge,
Sure.
and I still use it to this day, dude.
Yeah.
That's what it's from. And
Yeah.
so I go to Texas, I bring back 300 pounds of mesquite wood to cook. So
Oh man.
that's just me, man. I'm sorry.
I
Probably
no, I had always heard from the border guys that I worked with that maybe transferred up to Chicago or transferred to St. Louis and just talking with them, they always mentioned that kind of camaraderie down there and that type of interaction. And I can count on one hand how many times that happened with me working the interior of the
yeah,
United States. I had one supervisor one time have, coworkers over to his house for a barbecue once in my entire federal career.
yeah,
And I think if people operated in the manner that you did, that builds camaraderie, it builds team, it makes team building, it makes people work together better, know each other a little bit better. So
yeah.
again, that's just a small thing about Tony that shows the type of person you are, the type of leader or supervisor you are.
Yeah, we tried hard, dude, and I'll go back to McAllen real quick. I think the guys respected me because I was out there with them all the time. It's like, just let me know what happens. Just call me, let me
Mm-hmm.
know. Man, I was out there all the time. And we got to a point that there was I'm going to mention a guy here named Frank. He was with the Highway Patrol, with the Texas Highway Patrol Narcotics Unit. And he was retired. And he's like, hey, Tony, I've got an informant and this dude's got a license plate and he thinks it's a corrupt uh, guy that works on the border. Let's just put it like that. And I said, well, okay, well, give it to me, you know. And so he ends up giving me the license plate, and I'm like, man, I don't know what to do. I turn it over to internal affairs, a guy named John P. Awesome guy. So John's like, yeah, yeah, whatever, dude. I'll check it out because they get those things all the time. So man, he calls me back like 20 minutes later, dude, we're onto something. We're onto something. I can't tell you what, but we're onto something. So, it basically John P. From the internal affairs side, he kind of anointed us as you're going to work on our behalf, and we're going to go after this dude. And then it turned out that they tried to fire the guy for 3 or 4 times, and he kept trying to get his job back and stuff like that. And I'm like, dude, give it to me, man. I've got the horses here that can do it, that can do 24-hour surveillance as long as it takes, because, dude, there's nothing worse than a corrupt official, man.
Right.
So they had, and John worked in a different office. He wasn't in my McCown office, and they had to have known that this group here can be trusted. Anybody that's running with Tony, that group can be trusted. And that's how, dude, after a year and 14,000 pounds later, we put him behind bars, man. We put him behind bars.
Wow.
He pled guilty. And the people that he worked with, they would all come to, dude, thank you, man. This dude, we knew something was up. We didn't know how to go about it. Dude, there's just so many stories. I won't get into it a lot, but you had to worry, and I hate to say this, man, but it's true that you had to worry about bad guys, but you had to worry about good guys too sometimes.
Oh, I agree.
I've had 3 or 4 really good friends that did time, that were
Hmm.
cops.
Hmm.
And it's crazy, bro. That whole thing, you watch TV, you're like, check under your car for a bomb when you're leaving. Dude, I was getting paranoid. I would do that kind of stuff. It's like,
Yes.
come on, man.
I actually got to the point where I sprinkled flour around my car a couple times.
No, I had to testify against my best friend, man. And
Mm,
you look under your car. It's like, man, because if I don't testify, maybe he gets away, whatever. And
right.
it's like, God dang, man. But
Yeah.
it was all good,
Yeah.
man. It all turned out good in the end.
Yep. Hey, I wanted to ask you just real quick about your career as an agent. Did you like I know at the time customs and then when we transitioned to HSI, such a broad range of responsibilities, investigative responsibilities. I think I know the answer to this one. Did you personally, what was your preference case wise that you like to work? I think it's pretty obvious after our
Yeah, it's
conversation.
it's very obvious, man. Narcotics.
Yeah.
I like to work money southbound on the border
Mm-hmm.
because that was a lot of fun. Informants say, "Hey, this dude's bringing 400,000 or 500,000, and he's going to Mexico with it, and it's in the it's hidden in the compartment inside the cab." It's like, really, really, and then the thrill, and I know you've been through this, man. The thrill of being on the highway, and you're there for 4 or 5 freaking hours, just sitting there going, watching car after car go by, car after car go by. Finally, it's like, you know, wait a minute, is that the one? And then you get up to speed and you get kind of behind them, make sure, gosh darn it, that is the one. And then all of a sudden you went from doing nothing, sitting there eating your Subway sandwich to now calling your supervisor, the inspector's supervisor, get guys ready, southbound, and then gets into town and you're like, oh, he's going to the border. And then the dude pulls off and eats lunch for 2 hours. It's like, oh, and so that, gun running, money running, those are a lot of fun. And dude, before we transition, I'd be remiss if I don't talk about this one guy, a guy named Javi C in McAllen. He was a assistant port director. And that dude, we were doing cases, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning, 18-wheeler loads of coke and marijuana and stuff like that. And that dude would never say no because our storage facility for evidence was at the ports,
Mm-hmm.
and that for big loads, right? And that dude, you could wake him up at 2 in the morning. I'm on my way. I'm on my way. And this dude was a
Wow.
assistant port director, man. He didn't need to.
He didn't
Yeah,
have to do that.
and I'll never forget, man. That dude, he had a phrase in Spanish. It was the possible we do today and the impossible we do tomorrow. Like there was never No, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Sure.
And he had a lot of good dudes and girls that worked for him, man. Officers that whatever we needed. Hey, we need forklifts. Well, you agents, dummies, don't know how to use forklifts. We'll take care of it for you.
Hmm.
And that kind of stuff. But they'd open the port for us, man. They'd come and help us with stuff. And I just wanted to mention him because that dude was big influence on my life. That he just made things easier for us.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
you always meet people like that.
You don't always encounter people like that in doing your job. Sometimes you meet the complete opposite of that, and it's so refreshing to hear
Yeah,
stories about individuals like that they get it, they understand what we're out there trying to do, and they
yeah.
help the cause rather than hurt it.
Yeah, there was no email and wait for approval and then wait for
Right?
this. Call that dude on the phone. I'm on my way. I'm opening the port for you. And that
Yeah.
people like that you need, man, and you take care of them. You take care
Yeah.
of those people.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, let's if you don't mind, maybe transition here a little bit and kind of move on to talking a little bit about anxiety. And I kind of mentioned it here at the beginning of the episode, being something that so many people from so many different walks of life experience anxiety, and it's a topic that doesn't always get, the attention that it should get. It doesn't get the attention that it deserves, especially in a high stress field like law enforcement. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on anxiety, maybe your thoughts, your experiences, whether you experienced it professionally and personally, and just kind of start a conversation about that.
Yeah, that's one of the things when you and I were talking about that, it gives me anxiety to talk about anxiety. You know what I mean? So it's just one of those things
I
that, and
do.
I was talking to my wife about it, and I agreed to come on with you because I wanted to talk about this because, man, I tell you what, dude, it flipped my life upside down. And uh for your listeners, if it helps one person, and I know you see it on TV, it's like, well, if I can just reach one person, it's like, I'm not that dude, man. I'm sorry, but hopefully someone can sit there and go, man, I relate to this dude. I understand
Right.
what this dude's telling me. So I can tell you exactly when it happened, man. You talk, and I'm glad you mentioned that stuff about my younger days and football and all this stuff because, dude, I was a confident dude, man.
Mm.
Confident all the time. I felt like I was a good agent. I was doing good work. And then in March of 2002, I took that supervisor test to be a supervisor with customs. And I went in that room. They shut the door behind me. There was probably 20, 23 people 24 people in there. And I remember my whole world just shutting down, man. I'm sitting at my desk. There's people all around me, and my world started shutting down. And I'm like, what is going on? This macho dude that I thought I was, and I felt like I was blacking out, not passing out, but I just felt like everything was changing.
Sure.
And I remember the instructor saying, if you get up, you cannot come back in this room. And I remember sitting there and I studied for a week straight, man. I was just like, get home and study, study, study. And I remember just getting up and going over to the instructor and going, hey, I'm out, man. And he's like, what are you talking about? I says, I don't know what's going on with me. There's something going on. I don't know. I need to leave the room. They're like, well, if you leave, you can't come back. And I said, well, okay. And I said, can I just go to the restroom real quick? And they're like, all right, but hurry up. And luckily, because it was before the test, so there's no way you could cheat or nothing like that,
Right.
right?
Sure.
I go to the restroom. We're in a strange building. I don't remember what building we're in. It wasn't our building. And I get to the restroom and I look at myself in the mirror, man. And I actually say out loud, what is wrong with you, dude? What is wrong? Because I'd never experienced anything like that. Throwing water on my face, dude, dry heaving. Maybe I just got to throw, maybe I ate something bad. Just got to dry heave. So
Mm.
I tried to throw up, couldn't throw up. So then I was like, dude, suck it up, man. What's wrong with you? Get over it. So I went
Yeah.
back in the room and I remember my stomach was just killing me. I sat back down. I grabbed those little tin trash cans we had. I put it
Yeah.
right next to my feet, and I said, and I asked, can I sit in the back, away from everybody? I'm not going to cheat because I'm by myself. Can I just sit here and take it? And they're like, fine, go ahead. So I did. And I said, well, at least I got the trash can. And you get to the point where like you're going to be embarrassed if you throw up, but so be it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I took the
Yeah.
test and I passed it and did the interviews, passed all that stuff, but I remember after we took the test, we all wanted to go out and have a beer. And so I called my wife, like, hey, don't ride the train home. We're gonna go get a beer with these guys. And so we go to this restaurant and we're sitting there, and I'm thinking, oh, I was just nervous, it's all done with, right? So we're sitting there and I could hear like three tables away, bro. This place is packed. And I could hear three tables away the conversation. And it's getting louder and louder and louder in my ear. And then all of a sudden I'm turning over and looking at him. And then I start to mumble cuss words under my breath. My wife's like, what's wrong? I don't know, but why don't they shut up?
Mm-hmm.
And dude, I thought I was losing control. I really did, man. I hate to say it like that, but I really did feel like I was losing control. And it got worse. And it got worse. And to the point of it's like, man, I didn't know who I was anymore, man. I really didn't,
Mm-hmm.
dude. I thought, well, change the scenery. Go down to McAllen where your brain's always busy, so maybe that's it.
Sure.
And it just and the pressure and it just got worse and worse. And I don't recommend this for anybody, and we'll talk about it here in a bit, but dude, I still am probably not the same person that I remember, but I'm a lot better. But I wish I would have done this and I never did it, man. Is I to see somebody. I never did. And I wish, if they recommended medication, I wish I would have had something like that, because
Sure.
I remember seeing my doctor, my family doctor. I'm like, yeah, I kind of feel a little anxious sometimes. He's like, okay, well, take this, but never
Right.
sat down with someone to tell me, why are you feeling like this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you start to analyze yourself like, God dang, why? Because I didn't, 'cause like a dummy, I didn't go get help. Why do I feel this way? Why do I feel this? And then people would bring up stuff like, dude, you remember, that operation where three people got killed? And like, well, yeah. Well, maybe it's from that. Maybe you've put that in a compartment in your brain. I'm like, okay, and but you don't
Mm-hmm.
know, right? And so,
Talking like maybe it's
uh,
delayed reaction to something you saw or witnessed,
right,
maybe.
right.
Yeah.
So I think what helped me, man, and I hope your listeners take this to heart and maybe even try some of this stuff. But I started, as goofy as this sounds, man, I started an internal battle in my brain. So what I did was my brain was telling me I'm dying. I can't breathe. I got to go to the emergency room. Something's wrong. I mean,
Right.
I finally got, and I know my brain controls everything, but I finally got my body to fight back. And so I made part of my brain my body, right? So thoughts were coming from my body. So to me, it's like my brain's telling, dude, you're not gonna make it through the night. You better go to the emergency room. You're gonna get heart palpitations. You're gonna feel horrible. You're gonna die. You better tell your wife goodbye. And my body would say, dude, stop listening to that dude. You watch. We're tougher than that dude. We're gonna be here tomorrow morning when you wake up. I'll be right here. And so I made this battle in my head. That's the only, me as a naive dude, man. That's how I thought, okay, let's see what happens. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'd go to
Mm-hmm.
bed, dude. I prayed more than I've ever prayed in my life. And and then you wake up, and then my body goes, see, I told you. And the
Yeah.
brain's like, oh, you thought that was cool? Watch what happens today. And it would get worse. And my body's like,
Right.
good, dude, we're gonna help you. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's how I kind of fought this thing, man.
And we talked about this briefly before today. You and I were brought up in a generation of what I would call like old school thought processing.
Yep.
And w- w- I, I think everybody experiences something like this to different degrees, varying degrees. And I think it was instilled in your mind and my mind and the generation that we were brought up in to never say anything, to
Right.
never address it, to suppress it, to hold it down, not address it because we're afraid somebody will think I'm off or somebody will think negative of me or a
Right.
coworker will speak poorly about me or something along those lines. So we in general law enforcement, I think, learn to stifle that.
Right.
And as you know, that just isn't healthy. It isn't good for your body and your mind. And I think what you're saying is 100% spot on, hitting the nail on the head. That if somebody sees this, experiences this in themselves, in a coworker, in a friend, in a family member, whatever, that it should be addressed. And
Absolutely.
I I know people that have experienced anxiety and gone through varying degrees of it and have taken medication and have gone to therapy or counseling and it has been beneficial for them. That's what that stuff is for,
Right.
right? That's what the
Sure.
medication is for. That's what the counseling, the therapy, that's what that is for, to address that. If you break your leg, you go to a doctor and
Hmm.
they address the break in your leg to fix
Hmm.
it, to mend it and make it better. If you have a situation like this, that's what counselors are for, to address it, to help make it better. So your message is powerful. I mean, it's strong.
I mean,
Um,
there was times, Jim, I remember flying one time when I used to fly, bro. I don't fly anymore. Since 2002, I was so uncomfortable on a flight that, I was looking at the door at 30,000 feet going, yeah, I should go out that door because I don't feel good in this tin can. You know what I mean?
right.
And I remember landing in Chicago. I think it was my wife and I were together going from Houston to Chicago, I think it was. And I remember landing and calling my brother. I'm like, dude, man, this was at the height of it. And I'm like, I don't know what's wrong, man. And he's like, well, what are you talking about? I said, man, I was so freaking out on that plane. And he's like, oh, I know what you feel, man. You just want to grab that pillow they give you and just put it to your chest, just kind of curl up in a ball, wait till it's over. And I'm like, no. I said, the dude that sits in front of me, I wanna reach over and pop his head off. And he's like, ooh, that's a little bit different than what I go through. So, like
Hmm.
you say, man, everybody's anxiety is different. You know what I mean?
Right.
And luckily I never acted on that. And some goofy things, man. It's like my buddies would invite me out for a beer to a bar. I would stop at a convenience store and buy a 40 ounce and drink it before I got to the bar so I could relax. Because if I walk in there, there's a crowd, I gotta go. I can't be there. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Absolutely.
But I'm telling you, I'm saying a lot of things that are depressing, and maybe some people are at that point right now. Man, get some help. Get some help. I'm telling you, I came out the other side. I'm a lot better. But you got to get help, man. And can I tell you a real quick story?
Please do.
So, when I never could figure out back to, like when I was at my best, it's probably high school, college. And one of my buddies, good friend of mine here in town, his name's Randy. He was with the lieutenant with the PD, and he's moved on. He's with the district attorney's office now. He had a boat, and he was at a lake an hour away, and he's like, dude, come on out, let's go fishing. And my wife and I went. We went fishing with him and his wife, Carrie, and we go fishing. And dude, we catch catfish, right? And we skin those catfish, and we deep fry those catfish, and we crack beers, and we watch the sun go down. Dude, this flush came over me like I was back in high school, man. I was like, wait a minute, this is what it felt like before all this crap happened. 20 years of this crap, at that time, 15 years of this crap.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh. So Randy and I have a running joke, dude. So I went out, I'm like, well, so I was chasing my happiness. So I went out and bought me a freaking fifth wheel and then took it to a park and found out, being a Texas guy, took it to a park and saw that everybody else's fifth wheel was bigger than my fifth wheel. I'm like, yeah, we ain't having that. So
Mm.
my wife was mad, dude. I went and traded that thing in for a bigger one and then bought a pontoon boat and then
Oh
traded
man.
all that crap in and bought a motorhome. Now we have this motorhome.
Oh man.
But I feel like I was always chasing that happiness. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, man. I don't want anybody to think um, that anxiety is the end and it's never going to get better because it has gotten a lot better for me. It just took me longer because I never got help. Would I do it different? Absolutely, man. From the time that I recognized that something was wrong, or maybe let somebody else analyze me and tell me what was wrong.
Yeah.
If I would have done that, if someone said, "Dude, this is wrong," man, my life maybe would have been a lot better. So my main message to people is get help, man. Don't act like this tough dude. I mean, I was mentioning a couple of my guys, in this podcast, and those dudes, like, well, let me let you in on my secret. I've been
Yep.
seeing a counselor for years and been on medication for years. You would never think that this dude was on that stuff, but he goes, "Yeah, man, I went and got help." He goes, "And I
Yeah.
feel great." So that would be my message to people is, man, get help, man. Seriously, get some help.
Yeah, I would echo that. I would echo that sentiment exactly. And I was going to mention that
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier before recording that a friend, we
Mm,
won't say who it is, but a friend that said just that got help and made him better. So I think your message is powerful. Uh, one, if you recognize you have this going on, two, address it.
absolutely. And I tell you this, Jim, if anybody for whatever reason calls you and says, hey man, is there any way I can talk to that guy? Brother, screen him and give him my number and tell him,
Sure.
dude, I'm sending this guy, this girl your way. And have it
Okay.
and hoping I do reach somebody, man. Because I know I'm not naive, man. I know there's people out there just like me,
Yeah.
hopefully, right?
Yeah.
That went through the same thing, or someone that can connect and say, yeah, I know this guy, dude. And it was weird, man, because I when I would see someone that was struggling like me, in a weird way, it made me feel better. Like, oh, okay, I'm not alone. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Even
Yeah.
though they're suffering, I'm like, all right, I'm okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna make it. We're gonna be okay. And so hopefully someone says, God dang, I'm going through what this dude went through 10 years ago, 12 years ago, or right now. Man, I encourage them that if they need to talk to someone secretly, because I'll never ever tell. If they ever need to talk to them, man, absolutely call me as a friend, you know.
That will do. That will do. I think that's a great offer. And the reality is even as a prime example, even the toughest people, even the toughest person can feel that anxiety, and there's no shame in that and recognizing that. Again,
Right.
just echoing what you're saying,
Yeah.
get some sort of assistance.
Get some help,
Um,
man. And
yeah,
and I tell you, what I do now, Jim, is I work for the school district, and I started as a bus driver. Dude, I try to find something that I'm retired. How do I still feel useful? And I'm telling you, people that just retired from the service, you can't make over a certain amount of money because of Social Security, whatever. Man, go drive a bus, go drive a school bus. It's you get your middle of the days off, and it's gratifying because you're protecting kids. And it's strange, man, because these kids become your kids, and you're like, I'm never gonna let anything happen to these kids. And the kids, they're like sponges, man. I have kids that when I was driving the bus, I had kids that some grow up with no moms or no dads or with their grandpa or whatever it is, and they take to you, man. And the next thing you know, you're going to football games and you're going to concerts and choir,
yeah,
and these kids take to you, and but talking about anxiety, man, my director, her name's Kathy. She's awesome. Kathy, I let her in on my secret of anxiety. And it was weird, man, because we would line up, let's say in the afternoons, we'd line up for line up all the buses to let the kids on, right? Well, guess what? My bus was right in the middle of all the other buses, and I couldn't move left, right, front, or back, and I'm
mhm,
stuck. I'm stuck. So my brain would play that trick on me, dude. You're here. You can't get out. You can't get out. And I start that stupid little cough that comes in on me, and I get dry heaving. And I'm like, gosh. But I finally talked to her, and I said, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you put me in the back of the lineup? And just that, she says, Tony, whatever I can do to help you, I'm going to help you. And just that little move of letting me be in the back, people that understand it, you have to find people that understand what you're going through. And she let me be in the back of the lineup, and that helps so much with. And then once the kids get on the bus, it's no problems. We talked about, and I think it was one of your cases in Chicago, where I was doing the undercover, and I said, I'll let you in on a little secret there, Jim.
yeah,
There was one that, and I don't know how 20 keys of coke or something, whatever it was. Uh, I was, we had to stop like 5 or 6 times. This is when it was first coming on. I didn't know what it was, so I could dry heave, man. And I was like, and Bobby was the supervisor, Bobby K,
yeah,
and he's like, "You all right?" And I'm like, "Dude, just pull over, man. I don't know what's wrong. Maybe I ate something. I don't know what's wrong." So, and I kept dry heaving. It took me 5 or 6 stops to get to the bad guy. And I remember Bobby covering it. He must have known because he's like, no, we're good. He's just making a phone call because agents start calling. Where is he? Why are we getting
yeah,
this thing going? I was making fun, whatever. But it was very strange because once I got to the scene with the bad guy, I would flush out. I was the UC guy because my brain's now in, save your life mode.
Right.
And so, trying to get the deal done and all that anxiety would go away, you know? But it was the anticipation of getting there that would drive me nuts, man. And
Yep.
it happened a lot, and just there was just crazy times, bro. But like I said, man, I do feel better. Like I said, I wish I would have gotten help earlier
Mm-hmm.
or gotten help at all. But I'm telling you, man, the school district that I work with right now, and I don't want to mention them by name, but I'm telling you, you guys out there, get that job, man. It's an amazing job. Kathy's my boss, and she's amazing. Darren, the director operator, he's a friend of mine and understands me. Good dude, good solid dude, man. He would have been good on my offensive line in college. He's a good dude. And then of course our biggest boss, Rocky. She's amazing, man. She takes real good care of all the employees in the school district. I mean, it's very strange, man, how you run into a crisis at school, you know, and us as law enforcement, it's like, what do you guys talking? And obviously, there's big crisis, right, at school that sometimes happens, but stuff that happens in our department is like, oh, we need help getting, Jimmy off the bus. I'm like, that's not a crisis. You know what I mean? But it's just
Right.
people come from different environments. Our crisis in our job in our careers back in the day are way different than people's other crises in the
Yeah.
civilian world. You know what I mean?
Yep. Vastly different. You're exactly
Yeah.
right.
But dude, I love it. I love it, and hopefully be there for a long time, dude.
Yep. It sounds outstanding. And, you mentioned, you said you didn't really get help. You didn't, do that. But in talking with you here today, I kind of think that you self-helped. You recognized, hey, there's something up, and you
Yep.
found something that you enjoy doing, like the RV or the motorhome, and that's something therapeutic that can be beneficial or helpful to you. So
Absolutely, man.
I don't,
Absolutely.
I want to give you credit in that you recognized something was off or going on, and you did something about it.
Yeah.
So, but I agree with you wholeheartedly that if somebody has a similar situation like yours, take it even a step further to pursue getting that assistance.
Hmm.
And I think you're right. Driving a bus, being involved with children in the education world, and just interacting and being a good role model, that's got to be therapeutic and helpful as well.
Absolutely, dude. I love that part. It's like, I think we're talking offline. When I first started, they're like, hey, we need someone to take this baseball team up to KU, And I'm like, you're gonna pay me to go watch baseball? I'm like, heck yeah. So the job is, I like it. It's very gratifying, man. And then the fact that kids take you like, I'm this big old burly dude, and kids they're hungry, man. They're hungry for education. They're hungry for people to acknowledge them and to praise them and to tell them they're doing good. So guidance, they need guidance,
Right.
and I love that, man. I love that, there sometimes there'll be a fight in the school and they'll be like, hey, this kid says that, they got to bring in an adult. This kid says he will only talk to you. And I'm like, I'm
Hmm.
not related to him. I'm not nothing. I used to be his bus driver. And they're like, well, he don't want to talk to his mom, his grandma. He wants to talk to you. All right, I'm on my way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. That speaks
I
volumes.
started as a part-time bus driver looking for those middle of the day hours off, doctor appointments, groceries, whatever, cut the grass.
Hmm.
And then my boss, Kathy's like, hey, I want you to be a trainer. Okay, did that. And then, hey, I want you to be a discipline coordinator. All right, I'll do that. And then, hey, why don't you put in for the assistant director's job? Okay, I did that. And sometimes I'll come home after 11, 12 hours and I'm like exhausted. And my wife looked at me like, well, it's your fault because you could have done 6 hours a day. But
Hmm.
you're always striving to try to help as much as you can. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Well, I've taken so much of your time today. I appreciate it. I appreciate the conversation. I always find it so interesting to hear about people that I know, to hear about their law enforcement journey, their experience, their career, and their life experiences, like we talked about today. So, let me ask you one final thing. Is there anything you think we should circle back on and cover, or do you have any final thoughts you'd want to mention to wrap things up today?
No, I think we're good. I think you know, I kind of struggled with it a little bit because I wanted to come on and be entertaining. You know what I mean? I wanted to, uh, the stories of stuff that happened. Wow, were you almost killed on this, or have you ever had this or this? Dude, those stories I could tell you for hours and hours and hours. But I think that talking about, I wanted to really just tap into where I've been, where I came from. Dude, I'm just a regular dude from a small town. You know what I mean? And my buddies, Roy, Roel, Rusty, John, Leo, those are still the same dudes that I hung out with in high school. We still talk all the time. I need those guys in my life. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? But though that I just wanted to touch on that, but my main thing was I wanted to, if anybody needs help, I mean, that's what got me here, bro, because I was nervous just talking to you. That makes me nervous. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
my wife's like, you have to do it. It's treat it as it's for a good cause. Maybe somebody will hear it and go, oh man, okay, it's not just me. Because that's how I looked at it. When I heard someone was all the struggling with this, I was almost like awesome because it made me feel like, okay, I'm not alone.
right.
And so, yeah, but I mean, stories, sure, we could talk about that all day, but I didn't feel that was important on this platform that we have
Yeah,
today.
yeah, yeah. I think that was a great approach to everything today, just the conversation we had. And I am 100% confident that when this episode is released and people hear your conversations, that I'm confident it's going to help more than one person out there.
I
So
hope so, man. I really
yeah,
do.
absolutely, absolutely. So, I'll go ahead and conclude it for the day. And just again, I want to thank you so much. I'm so honored. I've respected you so much during our career, and respect you even more now after our conversation today.
Well, Jim, I appreciate you and appreciate you having me on, dude. And you're still as handsome as I remember, brother.
You got a bad memory. All right. I'm going to finish up and say, hey, to the listeners out there, I appreciate you listening. And I just want to mention, please remember to like, follow, subscribe, and share this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on YouTube, so I can continue to bring you top quality guests like Tony to the show. So that concludes our conversation for the day. Thank you, Tony, and everybody
Thank
stay
you.
safe out there. All right. The Right to Remain Silent podcast is brought to you by Streetwise 360 Studios. I would like to again thank today's guest for sharing the story right here on the podcast. Please remember to like, follow, share, and recommend us so that I can continue to bring you high caliber guests sharing their experiences just like we heard today. If your law enforcement agency is interested in training provided by Streetwise 360, or if you know someone that has an interesting law enforcement story to share, please contact me via the website www.streetwise-360.com. www.streetwise-360.com.